my welcome to this training. Today's training is going to be on intern training, which is something that many of you have done. And before I start, I want to take like a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, just to talk about training during this year, during this period. And for most of you, the training this year will be partly online or fully online. So can we go to the next slide? So, the good thing is most people are familiar with Zoom now. You're familiar, and your students are also very familiar. So when you do intern training online, either in part or in whole, many people will be kind of more or less psychologically ready for it. And different people will be differentially ready. Some of you have participated. Some of you have actually set up. So if you're setting up, there's a little bit of work to do, but there's a lot of resources and others who've done it that could help. So I've mentioned some things. An easy way to do it is do it through Zoom, which is the level that we use is Zoom Pro. It's not very expensive. And the main thing that's good about that is that it gives you more than 40 minutes so that you can have much more flexibility, and it has, breakout rooms and so on and so forth. Different activities you could see on the slide that you could do online. You could certainly plan online. At Poly, we do all our staff meetings online, and we do our planning online. You could even look at documents and work on documents together. It's very convenient for planning. Applications, some of you probably have online applications. Most of you, I would imagine, and JotForm would be a good platform for that. Interviews, Poly recently hired 6 interns, and we did all our interviews online. And we interviewed them separately, each one, and then we actually had them do a group interactive session together. And it works so beautifully. I think that online interviews might even be better than face-to-face interviews. And then when you're doing your training, you usually have 2 options. Sometimes it's synchronous webinars, which is when you ask for everybody to show up at the same time. So that's what we're having today. Everybody have to be here. And when you're dealing with that with interns, it gives you more flexibility, more possibility of interaction. You can also have breakout rooms that are very easy to do. You can break out, let's say you have 6 interns, you can break them into 4 free groups, ask them to go do something, and then you come back and report back, and so on and so forth. So that would be, synchronous, real-time training, right? Non-real-time training might be something that you record and you ask them to do. So for instance, you ask them to look at a piece of recording. Let's say you've recorded some piece of the training, that's 10 minutes, 20 minutes. You ask them to look at it before you come together to discuss. And then these others you know already, file storage is very convenient using a Google Drive or similar. And then using feedback forms. And so throughout, you can do feedback at the beginning, feedback in the middle, feedback at the end, and it's just very convenient to fix online. So hopefully that would inspire and give you some more information and encouragement to think about doing more of your training this year online. And for our Poly, we are planning our whole summer Youth Leadership Academy with maybe 40 to 50 students and 6 interns all online. And so we are developing these in an engaging manner, as engaging as we can be as we speak. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with my presentation. So next slide, please. So let me set my time so that I could know actually given myself some time. So okay, let's get started. So so the first thing is the outcome. So hopefully from today's webinar outcomes, everyone will get some information, right, about intern training, and then useful information that will help you in terms of intern training. Second is to have a chance for real people to share real experiences. We have a number of leaders that are going to share their experiences and their former interns to share what they got from the training itself. And thirdly is to inspire you to say that everybody is at a certain place in terms of training, and my challenge is for you to go to the next step. Some of you, the training, you would be doing some pieces of it. Some of you might do all the pieces, but you might want to do more, or to either improve the quantity or the quality of your internship training in terms of relevance to the students, scope, and also quality of the curriculum. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about 3 components of internship training that I think you should think about. That these are all big pieces. So the first is just personal leadership and community awareness. I'm not completely sure to what extent everybody does this. I think one of our speakers today, when they're sharing their experience, tend to do more of this aspect of it. And then certainly Anthony from Poly will talk about our own experience leading this part. Our second piece is government service training. I think most people do this. This is kind of on-the-job training, and within the context of government service. Thirdly, online tools. I'll just put it there, but I won't talk about it because there are many other resources, and it's really a topic for another day. Okay, so next slide, please. I'm going to go ahead and talk about interns training first. There are 3 pieces in terms of interns training. First is personal leadership and community awareness, and then let's see. Okay, so this I break it down into 4 pieces: personal leadership, Asian American history awareness, Asian American community issues awareness, and fourthly, race and intersectional identity awareness. And I just want to take a little bit of time to share with you what I mean by these. The first piece is easiest, right? It's a leadership program, it's an internship program. So you are vested in the development of the student as a public service participant, either as a career or as a volunteer, right? And so you want to help them develop their leadership, and there are 3 levels that I would encourage you to think about. The first level will be just personal leadership. This is just self-management. What are the characteristics? It might be things like time management, being responsible for yourself, being nice to other people, completing your tasks, having good communication. All these good things about oneself, how one guides oneself, how one leads oneself. That's one piece. The second piece would be interpersonal competence. And this is something that a lot of students really can use a lot of help in, which is how do you communicate well with other people? How do you work well as a team? How do you work within a setting, a government office setting? So that's interpersonal. How do you communicate with people who are your supervisors, communicate with people who are constituents, and so on. And thirdly, just civic leadership. You might talk a little bit about what is civic leadership. What are some good reasons for civic leadership, and what are some bad reasons, right? A bad reason might be a not so good reason, at least. Oh, I really like power and I want to make lots of money. Well, those are not very good reasons, right? Good reasons might be more like I want to be a piece of the action in terms of affecting policy that affects real lives and real communities. So that might be a better kind of reason for civic engagement. So the second that I want to talk about is Asian American history awareness. Why would students want this? Just like many of us, we are attracted to this work because of our background, right? Some of us are immigrants, students are attracted to this also because of their background. They might be born here, but they feel like somehow their background, in terms of their background and government involvement, they have certain feelings about it. And if you share with them some historical awareness, for instance, why has there been like hundreds of laws passed against Asian Americans? A lot of them have no clue about these things. And when you share with them all these laws and ask them, is it relevant to you today? Is it relevant to Asian Americans today? It somehow gives them context into what they are doing as government interns. They are aware that it's because of bad policy that Asian Americans were treated so badly in history. And now they could see that, oh, maybe we need good policies in order for Asian Americans and their communities to do well. One way to do it that we've done is we've done it through a history walk. And there are various activities and readings that you could share with them. The next is just community awareness, right? Like, what are the issues now? And of course, the big issue right now is under COVID-19, there's a lot of anti-Asian incidences. So you might, bring them awareness. Most of them are aware of them, and you can ask them, why is that relevant? Is that relevant to your life? Is that relevant to your parents' life? How is it relevant to government? Should government show leadership? Should government have policies in place? Why were Asian Americans so unhappy when the president called it a China virus? Why is it okay to call it a China virus in China and not so okay to call it a China virus in the United States? What do you think? They have lots of ideas. And finally, I just want to say a little bit about race and identity, because a lot of students, you will find that even though they have Asian American background, how they relate to it has not really been explored. And so you really want to have some activities. In life, we usually use a activity called Four Corners or Fishbowl, where questions like how do you, you might have a question like identity. My racial identity is a big part of who I am. And in our four corners, they can go into different corners. Strongly agree, strongly disagree, agree somewhat, disagree somewhat. And then you can have them have conversations, and they can hear each other out about how they relate to their identity. Are they proud of being Asian Americans? Are they ashamed of being Asian Americans? And the idea is to show a range of different responses in order to survive and thrive from their point of view. And all of this, I think, will give them the depth of situating into why they are doing this government service. Okay, so next slide. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about training specifically on the say. So I would break it down into three parts. The first part is helping interns understand government sector representatives training, right? And so you might invite us. A lot of the offices, government office already have this training set up. If they don't, you would just invite somebody from their office to speak, and you can also speak with some preparation. So the students need to know what's the mission of this government office? What does a state assembly office do? What's their mission, right? And what's the mission of the local district office? What's their organizational structure? How do they fit into that? And more importantly, what is the culture and the mindset that people should have, right? The culture might be, we are public servants here. We represent the people, right? The culture might be that we are very discreet about what people say to us, that we hold ourselves to a high ethical, legal standard. So what's the operational, philosophical culture in that government office? Being aware of that will obviously help them be successful. Second part is just office training. And this part would be helping students, interns understand better what are the responsibilities and activities of that office. Would that office do mostly constituent service? Would it be research? Would it be outreach? And what would be their role? Would their role be answering phone calls, writing letters? What would that be? Office training is also understanding more about interpersonal communication, both external and internal. How do you take a phone call? What should you sound like? What if that person on the other side is really stressed or angry because of COVID-19? How do you handle it? What do you do when there's a question you can't answer, right? Internally, how do you work with other people? How do you communicate appropriately, right? And then other things might be things like self-presentation. How do you dress for the office? How do you present yourself as a student intern? How do you problem solve? And finally, I just want to talk a little bit about potential intern roles, right? And so this has to do with initiatives. So a lot of times, unless we prepare for it, interns may not leverage the whole experience as much as they could. And so part of this is to work with the office on your part to make sure that the office gives them real opportunities rather than just busy work. Right? I don't know if people do this anymore, but it would be really sad if an intern, all they do is staple things together all day. Right? That would be very, very sad. Right? So it's important that your organization talk with the responsible person, the person who could make the decisions, and work with them and say, what are some really good things that you can let our interns do? And you have to let them know that your interns, you choose interns that are capable, that are mature enough and capable enough to do those work, right? And then the interns can also advocate for themselves. So it's a combination of you setting it up so that the office think about these things, supplying interns that are hopefully college background and mature enough to take on these really serious heavy duty roles, right? So for instance, most of them will definitely ask them to do constituency service. And it's not always easy to take phone calls and letters, right? And again, some of the things I've already mentioned. How do you respond appropriately? How do you calm people down? How do you give people an answer that actually is useful? How do you direct people to the right place rather than give them the runaround or non-answers? How do you be truly helpful, both in the way you talk and the information that you give? How do you connect with that, right? So constituency service is very important. Sometimes if an intern is really good, sometimes they are allowed to help a staff member work on a case. Maybe somebody comes in and the staff member will say, uh, Miss Intern or Mr. Intern, why don't you sit with me and see if you can help listen to as I help this person. Another one might be just answering letters or answering emails these days, right? So all those would fall under constituency service. If an intern is capable, the intern can take the initiative and say that, oh, when you meet with so-and-so, do you mind if I sit in just to watch? Can I shadow you for a day? Can I shadow the member for a day? Can I shadow the chief of staff for a day? Can I do this? Can I do that? The worst answer they could get is no. It's not. You're not quite ready. But if they're good interns, a lot of people go, oh, I didn't think of that. That's great. Why don't you sit in this meeting? So they need to have the initiative. Another area that interns can be asked to do is research. A lot of times, people should be getting interns from the community because they are closely connected to community. So that's why the background training really helps, that interns realize they are not just an individual, but they kind of represent their community, or they can represent it. That somebody chose them and they were put there partly because of their background. And they could offer to do research. They could say, oh, we're looking at underserved communities. Can I look at the Asian American community? I know some people there. Can I do some research online? Can I go talk to someone? Can I interview someone to find out what are the needs? How can our office help them more? So the interns can offer that. A lot of offices have never thought about it. They might think, oh, our district is 50% Asian, but nobody ever say anything about their needs. Maybe they don't have needs. And other people are just saying, hey, we're a small business, we really need help. We're this group, that group, we really need help. But the interns can say, no, actually, this community is really diverse, and there's a model minority stereotype, but actually there's some real needs. And I think our office can begin to address some of those needs. So they could offer to do that and leverage some of this skills. And thirdly, they could also offer to accompany office in meetings. Can I sit in this meeting? When you go to the community, can I go with you? Can I listen in? Can I make contacts with the community? And that really assumes that they have some sensitivity, some understanding of community history and community issues, and feel that they are part of that community to do that well. And they might go, oh, I know this nonprofit. Do you know them? Oh, you should talk to them. They really do good work. And yeah, when the representative want to see somebody in the community, they should really go there, and they could bring a group of people and just give some feedback, and it would really help our office. So those are just some ideas. Again, just to summarize, there are ideas about personal development in terms of community and historical awareness and identity awareness, so that without telling them how they should feel, how they should behave, they are given some context to think more deeply about these, because this really affects who they are. And then secondly, in the field, right, when they're doing the internship, How does the office work? What's the culture? What's the mindset? How do they talk to people? And how do they take initiatives to leverage all the things that they've learned in college classes, right? That they could bring it to bear and all the connections and to think about what they want to do in the future and how it might be related to the government sector, either as volunteers, as citizens, or as part of their careers. Okay, thank you very much.